Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to my Games of the Month video log for June 2024. In this video, I'll be talking about all of the games that I've been playing since the last video log, which was actually recorded a couple of days before I headed off to the UK Games Expo. So in this video, I'll be talking about everything that I've played from May 29th right up to the present day. I'm actually recording this video on Sunday, the 30th of June, 2024. The original plan was to record this on Thursday, get it edited, and then uploaded over maybe on Saturday. But unfortunately, personal plans and other circumstances happened, and I'm actually recording this on the Sunday, which is the last day of June, but I don't have any games planned for today. So yeah, it's going to be everything up to the end of June. So let's go back to Wednesday, the 28th of May. I actually had two guests staying over that night, Kevin and Barry from the Berkey and Badger podcast, and Kevin who runs Game Toppers. They came over to stay the night before UK Games Expo, and we played War of the Ring, the card game. In fact, I had two games of it that day. One was a sort of relearning practice game in the afternoon because it had been a while since I've played it, and then another one in the evening with four of us. Rick came over as well, and we played a four-player game of the War of the Ring card game using the base game. Now, before I talk about that, I just wanted to say that that was live streamed on the channel. So if you're interested in watching that, you can go ahead. Wednesday 29th of May, it was a live stream. But I also covered the game again last week. So I've then covered the game with the new expansion. So the new expansion, so there was a first expansion called Against the Shadow, which introduced solo mode and cooperative mode. I've not covered that one yet, but I do have it. But the new expansion, which is due out soon, I've been told in August, covers, it brings the game up to 6 players, but it introduces new factions. You don't need 6 players to play it. And last week we played a 4-player game with the new expansion. We played a particular scenario from the new expansion, which was War in the North, which is a 4-player game only, but it only uses some of the factions and some of the battlegrounds. Anyway, let's talk about War of the Ring, the card game. And as always with these videos, I am curious to know what your thoughts are on all of the games that I talk about. So let me know what you think in the comments of this video, if you've played War of the Ring, the card game, and what you thought about it. And that comment goes for every other game that I'm going to talk about here. So the other thing that I wanted to mention just at the start is this was not a sponsored video, okay? So somebody left me a comment on the last month's video log and said it would be better and more transparent if I was to tell you about which games that I covered on the channel were sponsored and which ones were not. And I think I used to do that, but I kind of forgot to do that in the last couple of videos. And I did have some feedback about that, so thank you very much for that feedback. So War of the Ring, the card game, not sponsored. All of the times that I have covered this game on the channel, none of it has ever been sponsored. I've never done any sponsored work for Ares Games. But I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and I really wanted to try out this card game, which is why I contacted them. They did send me a review copy of it. Let me tell you about War of the Ring, the card game, and my thoughts on it. Now, this is my thoughts on it after playing it sort of 3 times in the last month, and having played it before on the channel, and having played it before off the channel as well. I now love this game. And I wasn't sure. I wanted to like it. I really wanted to like this game when I first got it. But I remember my first game of it didn't go too well. I felt the rulebook wasn't as clear as it could have been. More, I think the structure of the rulebook, the way it presented the rules was a little bit confusing. And then after we'd played a 4-player game of it, which to be fair was all of our first games. We were all learning the game. And we played it and we were like, not sure about this. The second time that I played it, we played 3-player. And I felt the 3-player didn't work well at all. Now, we were playing with rules that were slightly wrong because the 3-player game I found quite confusingly written in the actual rulebook. But since then, I have enjoyed the game a lot more. Every time I've played it since then, I have enjoyed it more and more. And what I'm saying is, if you had the same experience as me when you first played the game and you were like, don't quite understand what's going on here, stick with it. Because once you get to know it and once you understand the intricacies of the mechanisms and why they work the way they do, it was great. And that game that we played on the Wednesday night before Expo was so enjoyable and it was so good. And then the War in the North scenario that we played last week on the channel, and if you want to watch that, that is on the channel from last week. Afterwards, we were all talking about it after the stream finished and sent a message to everybody afterwards, and it was like, that was a really good game, wasn't it? And we were all like, yeah, that is a really good game. So the War of the Ring, the card game, is the card game version of the War of the Ring, the board game. Does it play at all like the board game? Not whatsoever. It does follow the same story, i.e. you have a fellowship which is travelling from Site 1 to Site 9, Site 9 being Mount Doom. While that's going on, you've got all of these battles going on, but instead of a huge board with lots of miniatures moving around, it represents that in an abstract fashion with the cards and everything else. So it plays very, very differently, and it's just really good. I really like it, and without telling you much more about it, if you're interested, I would definitely check out the videos that I've done on it to show you how it plays and to give you a good idea about it. But yeah, War of the Ring, the card game, yeah, it's really grown on me and I really like it. Okay, next up is UK Games Expo. So I was going to do another video after I got back from UK Games Expo with my highlights of the show. But a certain thing happened at UK Games Expo which gave me a lot of negative feelings, and that really, it got to me. You know me with my mental health issues. I have these hang-ups, and as soon as I got back, these negative feelings just caused me to go into sort of a bit of a shutdown. And I ended up not doing a video for UK Games Expo. But let's talk about it. So UK Games Expo was two main things for me. First of all, I was demoing for Dranda Games each morning. So every morning of the show, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, I was demoing Galactic Cruise for Dranda Games, who are the UK distributor of the game. Thankfully, Dranda Games accepted me onto their demo team. And this is the point in this video where I wanted to say that I was wrong. In last month's video, I'd said that I now have a new #1 game of the year, because up until recently, Galactic Cruise was my #1 favourite game of 2024. And I know it's not out yet, but I'm lucky enough to have a prototype copy of the game. I've played it about 5 or 6 times, absolutely loved it, and thought, yeah, this is my favourite game. And then in last month's video log, if you haven't watched it, I'd played the new Stefan Feld game, which again, isn't out yet, but I was lucky enough to get a prototype, which was Civolution. And I'd said, Civolution is now my favourite game of the year. However, I'd like to go on record and say, I was wrong last month. Having now, and the weird thing is, I've not played Galactic Cruise in the last month, but having demoed it 8 times over UK Games Expo, and having played Civolution a couple more times, don't get me wrong, Civolution is probably my second favourite game of the year. Well, it is. But Galactic Cruise is a better game. So yeah, I'd just like to go on record and say that I was wrong last month and that Galactic Cruise is back to my #1 favourite game of 2024. Now, bearing in mind, again, full transparency, Kinson Key Games, the original publishers of Galactic Cruise, they have sponsored me to create some video content for the game, and I will be doing official how to play videos for Galactic Cruise later on. But if you feel, as always, and I say this every month, if you feel that clouds my judgment on whether I think a game is good or not, then you're watching the wrong channel. Thankfully, I'm mostly free of bias. There is a train of thought to say that nobody is completely free of bias, but I'd like to think that my thoughts on Galactic Cruise are about the game itself and totally unaffected by the fact that I'm going to be doing sponsored work on the game. Anyway, so I demoed Galactic Cruise, 8 demos of the game, absolutely loved it, love demoing games, and I love demoing heavy games because, and this is going to sound really arrogant, I'm good at it. I know that I'm good at demoing heavy games, and I think that shows my passion comes through when I'm demoing the game, and hopefully everybody who got a demo of the game had a good experience with the game. The games that I actually played at UK Games Expo. And this is another reason why I didn't really do a video after UK Games Expo, because a lot of people were thinking, what games did Paul get to go and see at UK Games Expo? Tell us about all of these new games that you got to play. The only games that I got to play at UK Games Expo were ones that I am due to cover on the channel over the next X number of months. So I didn't go there like most punters. I didn't walk around the halls. I didn't peruse the various games on offer and go, oh, that one looks nice, I'll play that one, and then come back and tell you about it. No, the only games I played were Rebirth, World Order, Black Forest, Luthia, and Civolution. Now, Civolution, I played that because I've got the only copy in the country, and lots of people wanted to see it and lots of people wanted to play it. So I organised a game on the Thursday night where I played Civolution. And we showed that off to the people that are there. I then lent that game to the Whose Turn Is It Anyway podcast people who played it on the next night, and then it safely returns to me over there. So that's Civolution. I talked about that last month and I mentioned it earlier on. It's the new Stefan Feld game that's coming out later this year from Deep Print Games, and it's fantastic and I love it, and it ticks all of the boxes for me. It's just not as good as Galactic Cruise. So the games that I played which were new to me over UK Games Expo were Rebirth, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit later because that was covered on the channel the week after UK Games Expo. World Order, which is the new game from Hegemonic. Anyway, those people that brought us Hegemony. I can never remember how to pronounce their company name. Black Forest, which is the new game from Fuhlenspieler, which is from Uwe Rosenberg. And also Luthia from Pavison Games, which is also going to be covered on the channel. So let's talk about, as I said, I'm going to talk about Rebirth later. Let's talk about World Order. So World Order, if you are expecting another game like Hegemony, you might be disappointed. I wasn't. I enjoyed the game. But what I'm saying is that Hegemony is massively popular. It was one of my favourite games of last year. It's won awards left, right and centre. And this is their next game. And I just wanted to put the warning out to people that if you think this is going to be another Hegemony, it's going to be another 4 or 5 hour epic, massively asymmetric game, it's not. Now, it's clearly got the same design team. You can just sort of see that, not just in the visual nature of the game, but in the way that the game tries to model a sort of real world situation. And unlike Hegemony, which is a kind of abstract representation of a country and their political stuff that they've got going on, World Order is actually set in the real world. I think it's 2010 that it's set in. So you have the real countries, the real superpowers, and real things doing stuff. Essentially, it's an area control game, and you are trying to place cubes in the various regions on the board in order to score points. But the way that you place those cubes, there's 3 different ways that you can place them. See if I can get this right. You can use your political influence to gain cubes in there. You can use military influence, or I think it's economic influence. And essentially the card play is a little asymmetric in that each of the different powers in the game does have its own deck of cards, and they will work slightly differently. But that's essentially the game. It's a lot lighter than Hegemony. It will play in a lot shorter time, maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, something like that. I liked it because of the accuracy of the game. And I spoke to the designers about this after our playthrough. We didn't play a full game. We just played enough rounds to get an idea of how it played. But when you look at these countries and what they import, what they export, which players or which superpowers are allowed to build military bases in those countries, it's all based on accurate information that was around at the time. And I quite like that in a real world setting. I know some people might not, especially with the world political climate like it is at the moment, might not like the idea of, oh, I'm China and I'm going to build some tanks and I'm going to drive them into here and exert my military influence. That might make some people a little uncomfortable. But yeah, I enjoyed my first sort of half play of the game, and I look forward to seeing what the final thing is going to be like. They are still tweaking the game. They're still developing the game. I am going to be covering it on the channel in October. They are going to be going to crowdfunding at some point in October, and I think around the middle of October is when I'll be creating a sponsored playthrough video for the game. So you'll find out more details about that then. The next one I wanted to talk about is Black Forest. Now, Black Forest is the new game, as I mentioned earlier on, that's coming from Fuhlenspieler. One of the designers is Uwe Rosenberg. Apologies, but I can't remember the name of the second designer. I'll put that on screen now. But this is what most people are going to call Glass Road 2.0. Now, I spoke to the representative from Fuhlenspieler that came to UK Games Expo and thankfully demoed me this game. I now have the prototype of this game, and I will be covering it on the channel in September. But he brought a prototype over, he played it, I got myself and some Patreon supporters, and we got to get a game of it. And I said, so is this Glass Road 2.0? And he said, oh, actually, Paul, there's an interesting story about this game. And I said, okay, what's that? He said, this is actually more like the original version of the game that Uwe Rosenberg submitted, which then got tweaked and modified and became Glass Road. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, this Black Forest is actually probably most of it an older game than Glass Road, but the card play mechanism was introduced for the game. And now that what they've done is they've gone back to that. Now, the reason why a lot of people will say it's Glass Road 2.0 is because it came after Glass Road. Glass Road is quite an old game now by normal standards. But one thing I didn't like about Glass Road was the card play mechanism. It had this mechanism where each round or each turn, everybody simultaneously played a card, put it face down, then you revealed the cards, and if you played the same as somebody else, there was either a bonus or a penalty, I can't remember. But I hate that mechanism in games because I am awful at it. I am absolutely terrible at guessing or predicting what the other player might do. I always make the wrong decisions. I just don't like it as a mechanism in games. Black Forest does not have that. In fact, that whole card play mechanism to choose what action you want to do in the turn is completely replaced by an entire other board where you move around and you perform actions and things like that. That is very much more my style of game, and I have to say that I did really enjoy my Black Forest playthrough. It had all of the good bits of Glass Road, and with the way that works, and the production wheels and everything else, but with a completely new mechanism for choosing which actions you want to do, which was quite interesting and a little bit interactive between the players. So I will be covering that on the channel. It will be a playthrough that is coming in September. It isn't a sponsored playthrough. Just to let you know, I reached out to them and I said, look, I'm really excited about this game and I would be more than happy to cover this on the channel in September at no cost if you were able to get me a prototype. And they said, yeah, sure, absolutely, we'll do that. So yes, that's coming start of September. I think the first week in September, I'll be doing a live playthrough of that. Next up is Luthia. Now, Luthia, I am going to be doing a sponsored playthrough of it, and I think that is happening in just under 2 weeks' time. So just bear in mind, I did do some sponsored work with Pavison Games before on Distilled, and now I'm going to be covering Luthia. Now, my memory of my demo that I got on the Saturday afternoon, I think it was. Yeah, Saturday afternoon. This is going to be a little bit hazy. And the reason for that is, as usual, when Paul goes away at a convention, he starts to suffer from quite severe anxiety and therefore doesn't sleep very well. Even though I was sharing a room with Will, who didn't snore. I was staying in a hotel that was right next to the airport, but the soundproofing was so amazing, we couldn't hear anything. So, for one of the few times that I go away, I'm sharing a room with somebody who doesn't snore, the room is nice and quiet, and still I can't sleep. So by the Saturday, I was almost literally a zombie. I put every bit of effort I had into running my demos that morning, which I think went really well, but by the afternoon, I was literally falling asleep at the table. So I did the demo of Luthia and we played a few rounds of it and the demo was very good. So thank you very much for Richard for the demo, and apologies if you saw that I was falling asleep. It wasn't anything to do with your demoing. The demo was really good and it used a way of introducing us to the game slowly by explaining how it played. But I don't remember that many details other than I enjoyed it. Now, one of the core mechanisms of Luthia, which I'd heard about before the game, got me a bit worried. And that was a sort of blind bidding-y worker placement. And I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that in games. For the same reason about why I don't like the card play in Glass Road. You put a token face down on a space. That could be 1, 2, 3 or 4. I don't know. I've literally no idea. And people who are cleverer than me or brains work in a different way will go, oh, well, I know he really wants that action, so he's probably put the 4 there, so I'll just put the... People can make those kind of educated decisions. For me, I just see a face down token. I'm somebody who prefers perfect and open information in games. And when I don't have it, I get completely confused because I don't know what to do. So I went into that demo thinking, okay, it's blind bidding worker placement. I'm not going to like this. It was fine. It was absolutely fine because it wasn't just, oh, you put a 4, I put a 3, you win. It's like, well, you get to go first and I get to go second. Oh, right. Okay. So I still get to do the stuff. Yeah, it's just you got to do it slightly before me. Right. Okay. So the thing that I thought was going to be a problem in the game wasn't a problem in the game. I liked the theme of the game. I felt that the theme of the game actually did come through. You are basically creating these classical instruments. You're repairing them. You're putting on music shows and things like that. So I did feel that the theme of the game came through. But as I say, it's a month ago now and I was barely awake during the demo. So at some point in the next week or two, I need to relearn that game. I will be doing it. I have a couple of practice games scheduled for Luthia and I will be covering it on the channel When am I covering it? 12th of July. There will be a live playthrough of that, and that will be a sponsored playthrough from Papasan Games. Right, that I think is the end of UK Games Expo, apart from just to say a big thank you to everybody who came by, said hello, and things like that over the weekend. It was really, really good. And that's the best bit of the convention. Forget the games, it's seeing the people, chatting to people, catching up with people who I've not seen for a long time, catching up with people who I only see once a year, things like that. So yeah, really, really good. So, moving on. The 4th of June, this is literally 2 days after I got back from UK Games Expo, 2 games of Rebirth, which is why I said I was going to talk about it later. So I learned how to play Rebirth at UK Games Expo. Mark gave us a demo of the game on the Friday, and then I came home with a prototype copy of the game, and I covered it on the channel on the following Tuesday. That video is online now if you want to go and see it, and I actually played 2 games. I did 1 practice game in the afternoon, and then I did a game in the evening. Now, what I've not got on my list here, because I've forgotten to write it down, and I've only just realised this, is that I also played Rebirth at the local club on that Thursday. So I've actually played Rebirth 5 times in the last month. And the reason why I took it to the local club is the version of the game that I learned at UK Games Expo was the island map, which I've been told is the more complicated version of the game. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just got a bit more teeth to it and it's a few more rules. So when we did the playthrough on my channel, it was the island map. We did a practice game in the afternoon with Stephen and Pete, and then we did the live playthrough with Stephen and Pete, having played it before. It takes about an hour for a game, maybe, something like that. But the game comes with the Scotland map, and all of the other content creators that have covered this game have all just talked about the Scotland map. Nobody else had covered the island map. I got the kind of exclusive on that. This was a sponsored playthrough, by the way, just to let you know. Mighty Boards did sponsor that playthrough of the game to obviously help their crowdfunding campaign for it. But then, through choice, on the Thursday after that, I took it to the local club and I said, look, let's play 2 games of it. Let's play the Scotland map and then let's play the island map. So I've played it 5 times in the last month. 1 of them has been the Scotland map and 4 of them have been the island map. I much prefer the island map, and that isn't just favoritism because that's the one that I played first, but the way that the objectives work in the Scotland map, I wasn't too keen on. So both games use objective cards. The objective cards are different depending on whether you're playing Scotland or you're playing Ireland, but essentially they work in a similar way. It's here's an objective. If you've managed to do this objective, you're going to score the points on it. Now, the way that it works on the Scotland map is that whenever you build, I think it's a cathedral or something like that, whenever you place something next to a cathedral, you get to draw an objective card from the top of the deck and it's yours. And if you manage to do that by the end of the game, great. The island map has, I think it's about 8 public objectives, which everybody can claim, and there's bonus points for the first player to do it and then the second player to do it. And there is 1 way in the game that you can draw a maximum of 1 personal objective. And the reason why I much preferred that is the issue I had with the Scotland map is you can get near the end of the game and you're like, okay, I'm going to build a cathedral there. I'm going to draw a card. Oh, look, I've already done that. Boom, there's a free boatload of points. Or, on the other hand, I'm drawing a card. It's near the end of the game. There is no way I'm going to be able to do that whatsoever. So the swinginess of those objective cards on the Scotland map, if you draw them late in the game, can, yeah, it's swingy. It can be that. And you might say, well, that's because you need to be drawing those cards at the start of the game in order to give you something to aim for. And absolutely, that's what you need to do. If you're playing on the Scotland map, build as many cathedrals as you can early in the game to draw as many of those objective cards so that you know what you're actually aiming for. Other than that, I actually enjoyed the game because we are in a golden age of board gaming. We have been in a golden age of board gaming for the last 10 years or so. We've got so many games coming out. And so many games tend to be being more and more in-depth, complicated, heavy, etc., etc., etc. And this only really occurred to me when, and I think it was last year, I went back and as part of my Cult of the Old series, which I need to do more of, yes, I'll be doing some more of that next week, we played Taj Mahal. Now, Taj Mahal by Rainer Knizia, same designer as Rebirth, was a game which I got when it came out, I think in 99 or 2000, And that was one of the games that we were playing regularly at the time. We had a lot less choice of board games back then than we do now. But we played it again a year or so ago, and I was like, this is still a really good game. And compared to most modern Euros, this is like really simple. Really, really simple. Streamlined rules, nice and simple, but still a really good game. And it made me realise that I think a lot of designers and a lot of games these days are like, oh, and we can do that. Oh, and we can do that. Oh, and we can do that. I think games have got, generally speaking, more complicated over the years. That's not to say that there aren't some lighter games. There are some lighter games, but the sort of Euro-y games have generally got a bit heavier. So when I played Rebirth, I was like, it's really good that we still have games like this. Because the standard medium weight Euro isn't for everybody. The local games club that I go to on a Thursday night, 75% of the people there would be absolutely happy with a medium weight Euro. But there are a certain number of people, and if you're watching this video and you are one of those people, I don't mean this as any kind of derogatory comment or criticism. I'm just saying there are certain people who the medium weight Euro is a bit too much for them. And thankfully, we have games like Rebirth, which are still a good game, but it's a 5-minute teach and it takes 45 to 60 minutes to play. And I'm just happy that we still have games like that coming out from the Doctor, his good ops himself, Mr. Rainer Knizia. And it's good that Mighty Boards have published a game like that. Not every game needs to have the kitchen sink thrown in and be a 2.5-3 hour Euro. And Rebirth is that. It is a relatively light to medium tile placement game where you're putting tiles on a board, but for the length of the game, I've enjoyed every game that I've played of it, and the people who I've played with it have said, yeah, this isn't a super heavy Euro or anything like that, but for a 45 to 60 minute game, this is quite nice. This is quite good. So that's Rebirth. If you're interested in that, I think the Kickstarter's probably finished at this point, but it will be available in retail. And yes, that was a sponsored video from Mighty Boards. ISS Vanguard is next, and we've played this 3 times over the last month. It was going to be 4 times, but I unfortunately had to cancel last week. Now, if you remember from last month's video log, I did talk about a fairly major thing that happened during the campaign, which could have been treated as a little bit of a spoiler, so apologies for that. But we are now 3 sessions after the thing that happened that should not be talked about. We're still loving the campaign. It is still either my favourite narrative-driven game or my second favourite narrative-driven game, the other one being Tainted Grail, by the same designer. And we're still loving the game, and we're still loving the way that the story is playing out. We're probably about halfway through the game at the moment, and part of me is like, I don't want this to end because it is so good. But part of me is thinking, we just want to see where this story is going. So yes, we are 3 more sessions in. Again, I can't really talk much about the game because of the spoilers. We have opened the secret envelope. We have chosen one of the 2 ways to go, and we have 2 parts of the 9, which probably won't mean anything to you anyway. But that is ISS Vanguard. We will be continuing that next month, and more on that later on. I mean, I've not spoken much about it because I've talked about this game a lot over the last few months as we've been playing the campaign. So yeah, those games are live streamed for Patreon supporters. So if you're a Patreon supporter of mine, then on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night, whenever we do the stream, you do get an email. So if you wanted to watch along, you can, or if you wanted to watch later. I know a lot of people are not watching it because of spoilers, either because they're playing the campaign and not up to that point, or they might play the campaign at some point in future. But those videos are there if anybody would want to watch them. Next up is Skytear Horde Monoliths. I have played 3 games of this month. 2 of them were practice games, and then 1 of them is a live playthrough, which is on the channel now if you are interested in checking that out. It was a sponsored playthrough video. I had covered the original game, Skytear Horde. Skytear Horde Monoliths was a sort of standalone expansion, but it introduced some rules changes which actually can be retrospectively fitted to the original game. And there is a new Skytear Horde Kickstarter, which I think is running right now, which is Skytear Horde Campaigns. They wanted me to cover Monoliths in order to just obviously spread the word and do a bit more coverage of the game. But Skytear Horde is a card game which I had played previously, and the reason why I accepted the offer of covering it again is because I do really like it. It's interesting. It's a 1 to 3 player game. You can either play it solo, which I think a lot of people will do. It is a sort of lane defense sort of game where you're having to play cards and you've got enemies coming in and you're trying to fight them off. They're trying to destroy your castle and then trying to run your deck out of cards. You're trying to close the portal to stop them coming in. You can play it as a cooperative game, which is essentially the same sort of game. Or the 3-player rules are that another player plays the horde. Now, I spoke to the designer about this and he said, yeah, we're not really phasing that out, but we're also not really focusing on that part of the game. I don't know anybody who actually plays that as a 3-player game. I think 99% of people playing this game play it as a solo or a 2-player game. Let me know. If you've played Skytear Horde and you've played the 3-player version with 1 player playing the Horde and you like it and it works, I mean, it does work. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. It works perfectly well, but I think the designer is focusing more on the solo and the cooperative experience because that's what 99% of people are doing. As I said, let me know if it's any different, but if you want to see Skytear Horde monoliths, check out the video that I did a few weeks ago. I would recommend, if you search my channel for Skytear Horde, don't watch the old one. It's fine, but the new one uses the new rules and I think is a better game. So that's Skytear Horde Monoliths. Then we played Captain's Chair. No, what have we got next? We've got Tom Heath. I've got Tom Heath in my diary. So on Friday, the 7th of July, this is still the week after UK Games Expo. Tom Heath and Rach came over and he stayed Friday and Saturday and we played 4 games. Now, of these 4 games, 2 of them were public live streams. 1 of them was a private live stream for my Patreon supporters. And then the other one was a video which is going to be appearing on Tom's channel at some point soon. So the first game we played in the afternoon was a 2-player game of Ezra and Nehemiah, which is a game that both myself and Tom have covered on our respective channels, and I wanted to play it. One of the things that I have whenever I'm working on a video for a game, and I've relatively recently finished the official how to play video for the game, is that I want to play this game. You know, I've just spent 35 hours creating this how to play video. I now know this game like the back of my hand. I now want to play it. So Tom was coming over for the Friday and Saturday, and I said, Tom, you've covered this game before. Did you like it? He said, yeah. I says, well, I do too. Let's play it. So we played a 2-player game of that. That was not a sponsored video, even though the how to play video that I created was sponsored. That playthrough was not sponsored. So if you want to see a 2-player game of Ezra and Nehemiah, which is on my channel Friday the 7th of June, featuring me and Tom Heath. Then in the evening, we played Pillars of Heracles. Now this was a sponsored video. The designer and publisher of Pillars of Heracles contacted me, and this is how this entire Tom's visit happened. He contacted me, he wanted me to cover the game on the channel, but I didn't have the time it would have taken for me to learn the game, practice the game, and everything else. I just wasn't able to fit it in. But I thought, hang on a minute, I've got an idea. Tom's already covering this game on his channel with a tutorial video, but not a playthrough, just a tutorial. How about, since Tom already knows how to play the game, why doesn't Tom then come to see me and Tom can do the teaching? And we will do a playthrough on my channel, but I will do it without me having spent 2 days of preparation. And obviously I'm not going to charge them as much for that because it took me a lot less time to do than it would have done normally. And that's what was agreed. So that was a sponsored playthrough of Pillars of Heracles, which was on the channel on the evening of Friday the 7th. Now Tom taught the game to us first and then we played it. Now before I talk about my thoughts on the game, bearing in mind it was a sponsored video, that playthrough, I don't want to do another playthrough on my channel that went like that one did, because Tom did a full teach up front, which was quite long, and it was a good teach, and Tom did a good job at teaching, but it was a full teach up front, which was about 45 minutes, and then we played the game, and unfortunately, as you will probably experience yourself with any game that you play with your gaming groups, the first time you play a game, having just been taught how to play the game, it's a bit rough. You will have some people who maybe missed some of the rules or didn't quite understand the rules, who aren't playing well, who aren't playing optimally. And I actually reached out to the designer and the publisher of the game afterwards and apologised for that video. I mean, we covered the game on the channel and it did raise awareness of the game and it did show people playing it, but I didn't feel comfortable in the way that that video went. And I think what I'm going to be doing moving forward is that I need to make sure as often as possible that people have played the game at least once before we cover it on the channel. This has been something that I've actually been thinking about over the last 2 or 3 months, because I feel that some of the playthroughs that I've done that have been, look, I'm just going to teach you and then we're going to play, have not gone as smooth as I wanted and perhaps didn't show the game in the best light. And it was that game that really drummed that home to me. Maybe because it was a Friday night, it was late, the game ended up running quite a bit longer than we thought it might. And it was also a lot more complex than I thought it might have been, but that's on me. I kind of agreed to do this work and I thought Tom's going to know the game, Tom's going to come down, Tom will teach it, it will be fine. I didn't do due diligence myself and I didn't look into more detail about, oh, let's just have a look at the draft rulebook of this game just to see how complex it is. And I think I underestimated it. Anyway, let's talk about the game itself. There's a lot of things about this game to like. The way that some of the mechanisms work in the game. Again, this was a few weeks ago, so I would recommend going and checking out the playthrough if you're interested in the game to see what it's about. But generally, we enjoyed the game. What we did find a trouble, and this was because for 3 of us, it was our first game, didn't quite understand the cleverness of the way that it works when you take control of other people's territories and the advantage that gets you and the potential disadvantage that gets to other people. So one of the things that is quite powerful in the game is if you start your turn and you have control of, it's either 3 areas with the same symbol or 3 areas with different symbols, I can't quite remember, you get a free boost on one of the tracks. And that's really important. Well, we didn't realise the importance of that. So when we were kind of just expanding, we weren't really taking that into account. I was trying to, but not doing it very well. And as such, you need to be aware of what other people, Paul's got those 3 symbols there. Maybe if I just move into there, he then won't have that symbol. So there is conflict in the game in that kind of way. And we didn't fully appreciate that. So in that playthrough, there's all of these rules, I think, about sieging or something like that. We didn't use them because we didn't fully, it was our first game, it was a learning game, and we were trying to get our head around the sort of general basics of the game without actually exploring what the game had to offer. And again, I don't feel it probably showed the game in the best light, so take that into account if you do watch the video. The other thing that was a bit surprising about this game, and I do have to mention this because as followers of my channel, and if you are a Patreon supporter of mine, you are paying for my honesty in these videos. So even though that was a sponsored video, one of the things that I did want to mention about the game is the interaction between the players can be a lot more than is comfortable for a lot of people. And I'm specifically referring to these demigod cards, or I can't exactly remember what they were called, but there were certain cards in the game that you can acquire, and the abilities on these cards are very, very thematic, but they can be very interactive with the players. And there's a lot of this game which does conflict in a very sort of Euro-friendly way, where the other player's not really losing that much, but you're kind of getting a bonus for occupying their territory. Well, then you've got these cards. Now, as I say, these cards are very, very powerful, and one of these cards is I'm just going to kill one of your characters or one of your heroes anywhere on the board, or I'm going to beguile them so that you lose control of them. And that's something that you do need to be aware of. I know that Tom generally doesn't like that amount of interactive powers or hostile powers or aggressive powers in the game. It's just something to be aware of. But as I say, the abilities of those cards was very thematic. You just need to be aware that those cards exist going into the game. So that's Pillars of Heracles. Enjoyed the game. Just got some concerns about those cards with certain people that don't like that amount of interaction in the games. But other than that, the core mechanisms of the game worked really well. Next up is Eldritch Horror and Civolution. So the two games that I played with Tom and Rach on the Saturday were Eldritch Horror, which was filmed. Tom has that video. He's going to be putting it up on his channel. And then Civolution. So Eldritch Horror is a game that both Tom and Rach are big fans of. They've got all of the expansions. Tom's painted all of the miniatures, and they've played this game an absolute ton. Now, as an Arkham Horror theme fan, I've never actually played the Arkham Horror board game, but I have played the card game a lot. I was up for this. I was very much up for playing Eldritch Horror, which I had heard of when it came out as being a shorter, lighter version of Arkham Horror. I don't know if that's right or not, but that's what I'd heard about the game. So a shorter, lighter version of Arkham Horror. Well, let's give it a go. Tom and Rach love the game and want to play it. That was the one that they chose, and I thought, I'll go into this. And I have to say that I enjoyed the game a lot more than I thought I would. To the point where I was thinking, oh, I might actually get this game myself. There was so much about the game that I loved. I loved the way that as you move around the board and you have all of these different stories and things like that, they tell this little side story. You know, one of your characters gets involved in a brawl in a pub and this, that and the other, and the narrative of this game came through so much that it kind of didn't matter about the game itself. I was just enjoying the experience of playing it, the moving around, the having all of these encounters. One of the core mechanisms with the game, which it was interesting that when we actually played this game, I suddenly remembered, I thought, oh yeah, I remember this as the thing that people were talking about when the game came out, is that you have a lot of these cards in the game, like the spells. And when you use that card for the first time, you then flip it over. And what's on the other side, you don't know what it's going to be. So basically the spells, I think there's multiple copies of the same spell. So you get a spell, but you don't know which version you're getting of it. And then when you cast that spell, you flip it over and, oh, something has happened because you cast the spell. And then you flip it back. So now you know that when you cast that spell, it has this like secondary effect or disadvantage or something like that. And I loved that in the game. So yeah, generally speaking, I loved the game. Except, and I don't know if this was one of the expansions or a variant rule or something like that, but there were these cards or there were these rules in there which were, at the start of your turn, you roll a d6, and on a 6, you get to flip this card over and resolve this amazing effect. And on the flip side, there were these other cards which were like, oh, anytime you need to do a something check, if you roll a 1, something really bad happens. And the reason why I didn't like those cards is that they were, in my opinion, completely out of place, swingy with the rest of the game. The rest of the game was all about small bonuses, penalties, details. You might go somewhere, end up in a bar brawl, take a wound. Okay, I've taken a wound. Oh, do this, gain a money. These other cards, and I can't remember what they were called, the really good ones, if you are lucky enough to just roll a 6, is like, oh, do this, have a piece of cake, gain $1 million, resolve that, which you've spent the last 2 hours trying to do and failing, but just have it for free. Yeah, game breaking in a bad way, in my opinion, and those cards actually spoiled the game for me. They meant that all of the other stuff that we were doing in the game didn't really matter that much. And Tom said to me afterwards, he said, oh yeah, we played one game where we were lucky enough and we rolled a 6 on this right at the start of the game, and then we just won quite easily. Well, that's not a game. What's the point of me making these 100 micro decisions to influence the game if, you know, you roll a 6 and you flip this card over and it's such an amazingly powerful effect? So that left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. But 95% of the game I loved. Absolutely loved. And if you can play it without those cards or without those rules, yeah, let me know what you think. If you've played Eldritch Horror, am I talking complete nonsense? Am I missing something? Let me know. And then in the afternoon we played Civolution. Talked about it a bit on the last month's video log. It's now my second favourite game of the year, but I introduced it to Tom and Rach. What's interesting about Civolution is that I'm coming last in every game I play. Doesn't matter. I'm still enjoying the game, but I'm finding that I'm getting worse and worse. I've played it about 6 or 7 times now. I'm getting worse and worse each time. I don't know why, but I just don't seem to be able to accomplish anything that I actually want to accomplish before the game ends. I have all of these plans. Oh, I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that. And it's like, well, the game's ended? Oh, right. Okay. Oops. So, Civolution will be coming to the channel in September. There will be a tutorial and playthrough video coming to the channel in September. There will very likely be, there was, that Civolution game was live streamed. If you are a Patreon supporter of mine, you have access to that video. It's on it's a hidden video on the YouTube channel, so you won't see it from the public. But yeah, if you're a Patreon supporter of mine, then I did post a link to it on the Slack channel, so you will have access to watch me, Tom and Rach play Civolution if you were interested. Right, moving on. The 10th of June, the 13th of June, and the 18th of June, I played Captain's Chair. Now, Captain's Chair is a new card-driven game designed by David Turtsey and Nigel Buckle. It's Star Trek themed, it's been published by WizKids, and it has been described as a mechanical sequel to Imperium. It's not just a re-theme of Imperium. A re-theme of Imperium would be, here's the same game, but let's paste the Star Trek theme on it. It's not that. 75% of it, my just rough guess, is the same game, but there's 25% extra to not just re-theme it, but to alter the game mechanically so that it fits into the Star Trek universe. So, for example, in Imperium, you do not have locations that you spend dilithium crystals to warp ships to. You do not beam down away teams. You don't send away teams to planets. You're not doing any of that sort of stuff. Now, I am going to be doing some sponsored playthroughs for this game. WizKids are one of my clients. They've been a client of mine for a number of years now. David Turtz is a friend of mine, and I got to be honest about this game. I will be completely honest about this game. I'm a Trekker. I have been a Star Trek fan as long as I can remember. When I was a teenager, my dad used to drive me round to this weird guy's house in Lytham St Anne's every Wednesday night, where we would sit down and we'd watch an original episode. We'd watch an episode of the original series, and then we'd have a discussion about it. This was in the early 80s, early to mid 80s. I've been a Star Trek fan, as I say, as long as I can remember. I've been to Star Trek conventions, I've dressed up, I've done all of that stuff. So on a personal note, I'm very happy that we have lots and lots of Star Trek series now. That said, when a Star Trek card game comes out, I'm always very interested in the game. But, and here's the thing, Imperium was a bit too much for me. And I was disappointed in myself, because I think the Imperium system is amazing. David and Nigel are two of the cleverest people that I know, and they have created this card game, and I'm talking about Imperium here, which is Imperium Classics, Imperium Legends, and Imperium Horizons, which is so good and so clever and brilliant, but it's too much for me. I just couldn't get my head round being able to properly understand it and properly play the game well. And I tried and tried and tried. And as I say, I was disappointed in it, because on the surface, when I started getting it, I was like, this is amazing, this is so clever. But I just couldn't get it. So when this game came out, and it is more complicated than Imperium. I'll be completely honest with you. It is more complicated than Imperium. There is more stuff going on in the game. And if you look at the cards, each individual card is quite a bit more complex, because it gives you lots of other options in the game. David's probably going to hate me for saying that the game is more complicated than Imperium, but it is. That's just a fact. So David's a friend of mine. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. WizKids are one of my clients. And Captain's Chair is going to be coming out, and I'm not going to be able to play it because it's too complicated to me. I'm just not going to be able to do it. And I was thinking, that's a real shame, because I want to be able to like this game, and I know how this is going to play out. I'm going to try, and I'm going to get bewildered, and I'm going to get flustered, and I'm just not going to be able to enjoy it. But that's fine. This game is for other people. And then I played it. And I'm not taking back anything that I've just said, other than I really wanted to like this game. And I put more effort into it. I went, right, Paul, forget what you think about it. You're going to play this, and you're going to play this, and you're going to play this until it clicks. And I'm happy to say, I am very, very happy to say that I have played it enough that it has now clicked. Now, I'm not an expert of this game by any means whatsoever, but what I'm saying is that I've played this game 3 times in this last month, and I am at the point where I now feel comfortable in playing the game. I might not play the game well, and I might lose to every other player in the game, but there is nothing worse for me than playing a game when I don't quite understand, not from a rules point of view, but from I don't know what I should be doing or why I should be doing it. I hate that feeling in games. And that's how I thought I would be with this game. As it turns out, I'm not. So I've played 2 games of this using the cadet training mode, which is a fantastic solo mode for me. For some people, they will be like, this is totally and utterly pointless. Why are you bothering playing this mode? But the cadet solo mode is basically you play your deck for 11 turns and see how many points you can get. There's no AI, there's no bot, just do your thing. And I'm like, oh, that's what I want, because the presence of an AI bot doing other stuff takes up space in my brain that I then haven't got enough brain power left to work out what I'm supposed to be doing. So the cadet training mode is great. I've played that twice, and then I played a 2-player game of it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game now. So the game is not out yet. The game has gone to the printers and will be out sometime in Q4 this year. I will be covering it on the channel, and I will be doing a sponsored series of playthroughs. I'll be covering the cadet solo mode. I will be covering a 2-player game, and I will be covering the bot solo mode. I will probably have to get somebody, and when I say somebody, it'll probably be JP, to run the bot for me, because again, I still feel that that level of complexity of an AI bot is a little bit beyond me. I just want to concentrate on my game. So yeah, Captain's Chair, Star Trek Captain's Chair, if that's what it's called. Yeah, Star Trek Captain's Chair, coming from WizKids later this year. Yeah, I can't wait now. It's going to be great. Right, next up, Windmill Valley Solo. So on the 13th of June, I played Windmill Valley Solo. I do solo plays now and again. I've sort of committed to doing 1 a month on average, but I remember I didn't do any for the first 4 months of this year, and then I had a whole month where I did 1 a week, or did I do 5 in a week or something? I did anyway. Windmill Valley was the next game that was voted on by my Patreon supporters to cover on the channel. Now, I have done a sponsored playthrough of the multiplayer game of Windmill Valley, but this video was not sponsored. I covered it because my Patreon supporters voted, they wanted to see it, so we did a solo playthrough, or I did a solo playthrough. This is on the channel now from the 13th of June if you want to watch it. Now, Windmill Valley is a game which I do enjoy, designed by Danny Garcia, published by Board and Dice. Danny had assured me that the solo mode was Paul friendly, and it was. So I played it, and I enjoyed it, and the solo mode was Paul friendly. It was a few weeks ago now, and I can't really remember the details of it, other than, yes, it went well. The only bit that I got confused by, and in the video I did get this wrong a few times, was where the AI player places their tulips in their particular area. So thank you very much to the people in the chat who kept pointing out that I was doing it wrong. Hopefully the video is now okay, and yes, I got it right. But yeah, Windmill Valley is a game which I do enjoy, and the solo mode is a Paul-friendly solo mode with a low-maintenance bot. Speaking of Board and Dice, the next game that they've got coming out is a game called Reef Project. I played it twice on Friday the 14th. One of them was a practice game in the afternoon, and then we played it again in the evening, and then I also did a solo playthrough the week after. So, Reef Project, again, this is a sponsored video from Board and Dice. The solo playthrough wasn't. The solo playthrough is something that I chose to do myself. I didn't even ask my Patreon supporters this time. I just went, I want to play the solo mode for this game because it was designed by David Turtsey and John Albertson, both supporters of mine, and I thought, sure, yeah, let's cover the solo mode while the game is still fresh in my mind. And again, the solo mode is very Paul friendly. I really enjoyed the solo mode for this game because it was so easy to run the other player that I really enjoyed that in the game. Now, the first thing that I do want to mention about Reef Encounter is a negative point. Bearing in mind, it was a sponsored video and Board and Dice are probably not going to be happy that I say this, but I do want to be honest, is the theme of the game I felt was quite weak. It didn't really come through in the game. The game is about scuba diving and sailing your boat around and fixing the reef by clearing pollution and swimming with the fishes and doing all of that kind of thing. And the game does have movement on the board. It has a diver track where you are moving your diver marker up. You've got another marker. You've got a scientist marker because you're also scientists and you're supposed to be doing ecological research to help fix the reef and things like that. So you have a science track or a research track that you move up over the course of the game. I think there's some other tracks as well. But ultimately, all of these tracks, when you move up them, just trigger icons which are other bonuses in the game. There is nothing on the research track which actually does anything thematically related to research. It's the same sort of icons. There are these icons in the game, and these icons are things that do various things in the game, and those icons you find everywhere. And that was the bit that I wasn't keen on with the game. If you're expecting a very rich thematic game, it's not that, in my opinion. Now let's get to the good part of the game. The rest of the game I thought was great. I really enjoyed the way that the game plays. My favourite part of the game is the way that the movement on the board works. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before, but it's really clever. Basically, you've got these different islands on the board, and you're going to be moving your boat around between these islands over the course of the game. Now, at the start of your turn, you can drop off one of these reef balls onto a route, and if the reef ball is on the route, you can move along that route for free. And it also reduces the cost that other people can move along the route as well. So it makes your travel free and other players cheaper. And over the course of the game, what's going to happen is the board is going to get more and more covered with these reef balls, which means at the end of the game, you're like, oh, well, I want to go to that island. Well, I can go there for free, there for free, there for free, and there for free. So as the game progresses, you will find that your movement options on the board are a lot more open. You can pretty much go wherever you want to near the end of the game. And that really helps because you will be drawing these mission cards and these objective cards in order to go to certain places to do certain things. And at the start of the game, you're like, it doesn't really matter. I'll just go to some places and I'll do some things and I'll hire some crew members and things like that. But later on in the game, you're like, right, I now know what I need to do. I need to get this particular thing and that particular thing. And I really like that about the game. The rest of the game, standard Euro stuff. You are gaining 3 types of resources. You are gaining algae, which you can convert into fuel for your boat. You're gaining shells, which you can convert into reef balls. And you're gaining like photography or video footage, which you can sell for money or do other things with it. It's resources, gaining resources, spending those resources to do things. But the moving around the board part of the game, I thought was really interesting. So yeah, that's Reef Project and the solo mode. Very much enjoyed the solo mode. Those videos are on the channel if you're interested in watching them. Next up, on the 16th, we played Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. We did 2 sessions of that. There was actually supposed to be another session today. I was supposed to be playing Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth today, but with the way that this week's gone, I had to cancel it, and I'm glad I did because otherwise this vlog wouldn't have been done. So I'm spending today creating this vlog instead of playing Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. So our campaign continues. We've got about 4 games left of it before the end of this campaign. I'm starting to go off this game. I have spoken really favourably about Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth for the last 2 years, maybe even 3 years. And I remember when I did my big long live stream over Christmas a couple of years ago, Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth ended up in my top 10 games. Because I just enjoy playing it so much. There's something about the game. I think they've done an amazing job with the production, with the app, with the theme. everything about playing the game is just enjoyable. But the reason I'm starting to go off it is that I'm now getting a little... We've played it a lot, but it is starting to be a bit samey. And this was one of the criticisms of the game which other people had, which I kind of dismissed and said, oh, I don't find it samey. I'm now finding it a bit samey. It's still a nice game. There is actually nothing wrong with this game. It is still a very good game, and I still really enjoy the card play. Maybe I just had a couple of sessions where my brain was thinking, oh, I wish I was playing Agamonia, or I wish I was playing this, or I wish I was playing this. So it's still a good game, and it's still enjoyable, but I'm starting to enjoy the game a bit less than I have done in the past. Anyway, Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. A couple more sessions left at some point over the next couple of months. Next up, speaking of other games that I'm very excited about, Primal: The Awakening. On the 19th, the 20th and the 26th of this month, I played games of Primal: The Awakening. The first time I played was a 2-player game with Derek from Kanji Studios. He took some time out in his busy schedule to teach me how to play the game over Tabletop Simulator. Then, the next day, I took it to my local games club, and we played a 4-player game of it, just playing the prologue. And then one evening, Paul Snuggs came over, and we played a 2-player game of it. Now, Primal: The Awakening, interesting story about this game. The publishers, Reggie Games, contacted me, like many publishers do, and said, Paul, we're interested in getting you to cover this game on your channel. Here's a little bit about it. Let me know if you'd be interested. Let us know the costs, etc., etc. I think they actually contacted me because they wanted a full how-to-play video for the game. And that's one thing that I do, and they contacted me and they said that's what we're interested in. But I think they wanted it for maybe June or July or something, and I said, look, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to be able to fit this in. My schedule is such that I don't have time for that, but I might be able to do a playthrough video. Let me have a look at the game and get back to you. So I'm a member of various Discord servers for games that I'm interested in. And one of those Discord servers in particular is the Discord server for Aeon Trespass Odyssey, which, as you'll know, I played a lot of over the last 12 months, and I have the how to play videos for that coming out later this year. And on that channel, on that Discord server, there is a channel for other games. And the people on that channel generally like their boss battler, big miniature games, etc., etc. And so many of them were talking about Primal: The Awakening that I thought, ooh. And they were all saying, this game is amazing. This game is really, really good. I also then spoke to my Patreon supporters and they said, this game is amazing. This game is really good. You should totally cover it. So I agreed to cover this game before really knowing anything about it myself. I went along with the fact that all of the noise that I was hearing was overwhelmingly positive about this game, that I didn't actually look into it that much myself. Anyway, Reggie Games have sent me a copy of the game, but they didn't just send me the base game. On screen now is a picture of what they sent me. They sent me an all-in pledge. Now that is very, very generous of them. Oh, and if you're wondering why there is a picture of Dobble in the image, it's because I operate a 1-in, 1-out policy. So 1 in, my copy of Primal: The Awakening, 1 out, copy of Dobble. That's fair, isn't it? Sure, 1 in, 1 out. Very generous, and I feel very privileged and lucky to be in the position that I am, where publishers will literally send me an all-in pledge of the game worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars. They could have just sent me the base game, to be fair, because I'm probably only going to be covering the base game on the channel, but I'm not complaining. They sent me everything. So I have now played this game. Now, bear in mind, I am going to be doing some sponsored playthroughs of this game, or at least one sponsored playthrough of the game later on this year. September is the time when I've got it scheduled, but this game's really good. It's really, really good. It is as good as what everybody has been telling me about it. It is a boss battler, and it's a boss battler with no fluff at all. What happens in this game is that the board is literally the boss in the middle. This is one of the bosses that I've almost finished painting. This is Vyraxian, who you fight in the prologue. That sits in the middle of the table. And then there's the 4 sectors around it. The one in front, the one behind, the one to the left, and the one to the right. And that's it. That's the board. Because the only thing that is relevant when you're taking place in a boss battler is where you are in relation to the boss. So it abstracts out all of the other, you don't have a big board where you're moving around or anything like that. It is literally just focused on that. And the campaign, which you can play, you don't have to play, is a series of boss battles where you just play a boss battle, and that's it. But the card play mechanism in the way that it works, the tactical nature of the game, the cooperative nature in the game, in that players have to assist each other, taunting to get it to face you when it's somebody else's turn so that they can hit it in the back, assisting other players, it's great. And I've only played it 3 times, and I've only played the prologue, but I'm really excited to play it more. So that's Primal: The Awakening. More on that in the next few months. What's next? Rise of Babel. That's the last game that I've played physically before we talk about the board game arena game. So I've played Rise of Babel 3 times in the last month. One of them was a learning game. One of the designers of the game taught me how to play on Tabletop Simulator. And then we played 2 games of it on Friday. That's on the channel now if you are interested in going and watching that. We did a practice game in the afternoon, and then we did a full game in the evening. And this is what I said right at the start about the fact that I think my videos are better with everybody having played the game before. And that was absolutely the case with this one. We played the game in the afternoon. I taught Arthur and Pete how to play, and we played it. And the game went well, and that was it. And then we went downstairs, we had food, and then we sat down for the evening, and the evening game was a lot better. Because we'd all played it before, we all knew the rules, we all had more of an idea of what we were doing, and I believe that game that we played in the evening on the Friday showcased the game a lot better than the afternoon game would have done, for many reasons. And the designer was watching while we were playing, and he contacted me afterwards and said, yeah, a really good stream. And I said, yeah, I thought it went really well as well. So Rise of Babel is coming to Kickstarter on the 9th of July. So it's not out on Kickstarter yet, but it is coming out a week on Tuesday. And that video that I did is live on my channel now. That will give you an idea of how it plays out. The game itself uses the Dominion-style deck building rules as its core mechanism. You have a deck of 10 cards, you draw 5 cards at the start of the game. On your turn, you play all of those cards. You cannot keep any cards from one turn to the next. You then use those cards to perform various actions, such as loading resources to your camp. Moving resources to your camp, loading them onto your elephant, moving your elephant towards the towers, depositing them, building the towers and things like that. And some of the cards have got gold on, which you can use to buy additional cards, which go to your discard pile, and you will build up your deck over the course of the game. You will be improving your deck by buying these cards, and the more gold you spend on the cards, the better the cards are. But the other part of the game is the tower, the tile placement in the tower. And that is where the player interaction comes in, because you are trying to, A, put your tiles in certain patterns based on the type of resource that you're placing. So the wood, for example, that needs to be placed in horizontal rows to score, but you're also blocking the other players. Now, when I heard about that in the game, I thought, uh-oh, negative player interaction, not going to enjoy this. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's part of the game. And it happens, and you've all got to do that. If you see somebody with a line of 4 blue bricks, and you know that a 5th blue brick is going to get them another 5 points, you block that space. That's the game. And if you are the kind of player that doesn't like blocking another player's space, then this isn't the game for you. You need to do that. You all need to be doing that. You need to be gaining points the best you can, but also blocking the other players from completing their lines and their rows. It's not like Connect 4, but suddenly I just thought of Connect 4. Anyway, that's Rise of Babel. The video is on the channel now if you're interested in watching it. Kickstarter goes live on the 9th of June. That's everything, I think, from all of the games that I have played physically or on Tabletop Simulator. Now let's talk about some board game arena games. I'm going to try and keep this short. Federation, played a game of Federation, still a fantastic game. Spirium is on Board Game Arena. Spirium is a game from, 10, 12 years ago, designed by William Attier, who designed Kalos. Spirium is really good, and it's on Board Game Arena, and I'd not played it for about 10 years, so I had a game of that. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was really good. I've played 2 games of Hadrian's Wall, so I have now actually played Hadrian's Wall for the first time. And then I played it again. I played a solo game, which I won, despite this is a funny story. And I don't know if this is a bad point about the game. People have been telling me for over a year, possibly 2 years, that I really need to play Hadrian's Wall. I was in bed one night, I was suffering from insomnia, I couldn't sleep, and I thought, I'll tell you what, I'm going to play Hadrian's Wall. It's on Board Game Arena, there's a solo mode for it, so I'm just going to play it. But I didn't read the rules at all. I literally played the game trying to work out what the heck I was doing without reading the rules beforehand. And I won. I don't know how, but I won. So I won the solo game of Hadrian's Wall, probably on the simplest level, without actually reading the rules. Then, afterwards, I went to the rule book, I read half of the rules, and then I played a 2-player game of it. So I've now played 2 games of Hadrian's Wall, and I still don't actually know how certain parts of the game work, because there's a lot going on in this game. There's so many different things. It's a roll and write game, but without the roll. And yeah, I did really enjoy it. And I want to play it more. And thankfully, it's on Board Game Arena. But when I went to the rulebook, I was like, oh, and there's this. Oh, and there's this. And there's this. There's so much in this game. There's quite a lot going on. It's not complicated as such. There's just lots and lots of different things that you can do. So it's my first experience with Hadrian's Wall. I've also played a game of Distilled, which has also appeared on Board Game Arena recently. The Maracaibo tournament is still going on. Round 2, I think, has just started yesterday. But I did have one game that finished of Maracaibo. Did I do well in that one? I can't remember. I think I won that one. I either won or came second. I can't remember. Seven Wonders Architects. I've played that once before, and I fancied a game of that, and that's on Board Game Arena. Good implementation. Really good implementation. Gaia Project. So Gaia Project, I am going to be covering this on the channel in September with the new expansion, and I'm going to be playing it next week as well. So I needed to relearn how to play Gaia Project, and it's on Board Game Arena. So I had a relearning game of Gaia Project on Board Game Arena. It is a fantastic game. Gaia Project is an amazing, amazing game, and I loved it, and I'm going to be playing it next Friday. More on that later. Also played a Feast for Odin game as well, which, is always good. Feast for Odin, top 10 game for me, easily. And Board Game Arena has the Norwegians expansion, which I was surprised that it got the Norwegians expansion, but I'm glad it did. Other content that I've done on the channel over the last month. I did an interview with David Turtsey about Star Trek Captain's Chair. So Captain's Chair that I spoke about earlier on. If you want to go back in time a few weeks, there is a video on my channel of a live interview with David, which was the exclusive reveal about the game. That is the first time that we showed the front cover of the game, the first time we showed any cards from the game. Thank you very much to WizKids for allowing me to do that. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, that's there on the channel if you want to see that. I also did an unboxing video of Unconscious Mind, which I'm working on the how to play video for at the moment. And I did an unboxing video for Primal the Awakening, that big boss battle that I talked about. I unboxed all of those boxes on a live stream. And I did the live Q&A as well. Other things that I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to say a big thank you to a company called By the Same Token. These were at UK Games Expo, and they produce acrylic tokens for board games to basically bling up your game. Now, they contacted me before UK Games Expo and said, Paul, we love the content on your channel. We'd like to offer you a free gift as a thank you for you creating videos that we all watch. And because we're a company and we make these fancy tokens, let us know what you want. Always very nice. Always makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. I don't like getting free things. It just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And the other side of this thing is I'm not one of those people that generally blings up their games. There are a number of games that I have in my collection that I really like. But the idea of spending 30, 40, 50 pound for some super nice extra deluxe components, or, £100 for an insert or something like that, I don't do that. I'm not the kind of person that really does that at all. So they were offering me these free tokens, and I was like, well, that's very nice of you, but to be honest, there's nothing that I can think of. I can't think of a single game that I have in my collection where I would play it enough to appreciate these deluxe components. Are you sure you want to do it? They said, yeah, just pick whatever you want. So I went through the list of all of the things that they offered, and I went, Okay, Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium is a really good game. So if you're absolutely insisting on it, then yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to put a picture on screen of these now. Now, these come with a layer of protective film that you have to peel off. So it was quite a long time to sit there, and you do need nails, but these look fantastic. Now, I've got a game of Dune Imperium planned for a week on Saturday, and I'm going to take these along. So yeah, thank you very much to Buy the Same Token for these. I will put a link to their website in the description of this video. As I said, for me, this isn't something that I would buy myself with my own money, because I'm not the kind of person that buys that. But I have to admit, these look absolutely gorgeous, and I am going to enjoy playing with them. So thank you very much for that free gift. I even said, I will give you a shout out on my monthly video log. And they said, no, you don't need to. We're giving you these as a thank you for the videos that you make that we watch. And I said, I'm not going to not give you a shout out on my video. So just to let you know, they sent me this gift, and they weren't insisting that I talk about them and cover them. That's not what this was about. They just wanted to give me this, and yeah, thank you very much for that. See how uncomfortable I feel about these things? Right, next up, birthday plans. On screen now is an image of everything that I've got planned next week. I am considering, if I have time later today, to actually do another video telling you about my plans for next week. But if I don't get a chance, these are the plans. Keep an eye on the Patreon page and the Facebook page for a list of this. These are all going to be public live streams. None of these are going to be Patreon only. It's my birthday next week. I'm taking the week off work, and I am spending the week creating content for me to enjoy, and hopefully for you to enjoy as well. And yeah, none of it's paid for. So that's why it's a week off work. However, I will be actually working harder than I normally do in a week. Doing all of these live streams is going to be absolutely exhausting, but that's what I do because I'm crazy. The week after that, Luthia, as I mentioned earlier on, Luthia is going to get covered on the 12th of July. That's going to be a tutorial and playthrough. And then off to Manacon. I'm going to a convention in Leicester. That's in the middle of July. I'm going to be playing Civolution, Primal, Don't Starve, Roads and Boats, Black Forest, Gaia Project, Voidfall and Unconscious Mind. I've pretty much got my entire weekend planned. They're the games that I'm going to be playing. After Manacon, I am going to be covering another Reiner Knizia game from Phalanx Games, Huang. Don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. This is the updated version of Yellow and Yangtze, which is the updated version of Tigris and Euphrates, I believe. It arrived last week. I haven't really looked at it yet, but I'm going to be covering that later in July. And the new game from Glass Cannon Unplugged, Don't Starve, which I'm very excited about because I love the stuff that Glass Cannon Unplugged do, and I'm going to be covering that later in the month. Let's move on to a Patreon update. So, as I mentioned last month, everything seems to have slowed down. And I don't mean slowed down as in the number of new people joining, but also the number of new people leaving. And as of last night, in this month, 20 people had left and 19 people had joined, which is about 50% of what it normally is in a month. Now, that was as of last night, but I woke up this morning and I've got a new Patreon supporter as of this morning. So right now, the total for this month is 20 people have left and 20 people have joined. So it's staying stable, which is absolutely fine. I'm going to put a list on screen now. This is everybody who has joined me in this month. I would say so far, it is currently the last day of June, but there you go. This is the list. Thank you very much to everybody who has started supporting me, believing in what I do and wanting to help support the channel and help me carry on doing what I do. Also, a big thank you to everybody who has stayed with me as a Patreon supporter. Speaking of Patreon supporters, I wanted to give a shout out to somebody who has been a Patreon supporter of mine for many, many years and who I actually met once at a US convention. So I last went to a US convention, I don't know, 4 years ago or something like that. And I remember meeting him. Now, this person is not somebody who is active on the community Slack channel, but he's a big fan of what I do. And unfortunately, he's going into hospital for something fairly serious. And he sent me an email, sent me a message last week, and it just brings it all home. Because I live in a world where I get to play board games. My job is creating videos for board games. Clearly, I'm excited about board games. I'm very passionate about them. I get a lot of enjoyment out of them. I get a lot of excitement out of them. 54 years old next week, and new games arrive, and I open them up, and I get excited. You know, it's like, these are just toys. Look at these miniatures. It's great. And then every so often, something happens that just reminds you that life is not always fun and games. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to Lucky Jackson for your support over the years, and best wishes. So just to wrap things up for this video, it's very difficult to follow something like that. But I think I've pretty much spoken about everything that's been going on. I've covered all of the games that I've played in the month. I've told you about what's coming up over the next month, what I'm excited about. I've mentioned my birthday plans for next week. And there is one thing that I just wanted to mention. One of the charities that I've been supporting for a number of years now is the Chrysalis Youth Empowerment Network. And Ben Parkinson contacted me, and they are currently running another fundraiser to raise money to help host another board game convention in Uganda, and has asked for my help in promoting it. So I'm going to put some links in the description of this video, and also because it's actually times quite well, because next week I've got all of these live streams planned for next week, and none of them are sponsored. I've basically said, okay, I'll give this a shout out next week. So yeah, if you're interested in supporting the Chrysalis Youth Empowerment Network with what they're doing, then definitely check out the link in the description of this video, and I will be supporting this next week. So my charity payment money for next week, for next month, is going to go to this. For those of you that don't know, all of my advertising revenue goes to charity. Every single penny of my advertising revenue from YouTube goes to charity. It has done for years. And next month, I will be donating all of that money to charity to this fundraiser. And if you're interested in donating to help support them as well, then you can do so. Not expected, but obviously they will appreciate any support that they can get. And I'll be giving them a shout out in all of the videos for next week. That's it. I will see some of you next week for some of the live streams for my birthday. It's actually my birthday on the Wednesday, and I'm going to be doing Hoplomachus Victorum all day, non-stop. It's going to be tiring. But until then, thank you very much for watching. As I mentioned at the start, if you've got any comments, any thoughts, good or bad, on any of the games that I've talked about in this video, please leave them in the description below. And if you want to support the channel and help keep me carrying on doing what I do, then you can do so at patreon.com/gaming rules. Until next time, take care, and thanks for watching.